Hey, East Coast Lumberjack here. A little blurry. Hey, very, very neat day today. Now, in case you're wondering why I'm always dancing, when I take off these headphones, it's because they're not just earmuffs. I have the radio playing on them, so sometimes I'm getting down and getting dirty. Or getting groovy, whatever. There, now let's shut them off. Anyhow, so today in the shop, I've got something neat going on. Actually, I'm going to have to take a second here and clean this. Just hang on a sec. Looks like there's something not right with the camera lens here. There, that looks better. So anyhow, today, I'd say we better put a hat on so that we look a little bit more presentable. So today is I've got something neat going on here today, and I want to, let's start up here, okay? We'll talk a little bit first. Now, if you haven't subscribed to my channel yet, there's all kinds of great stuff coming up here in the next few weeks. And before I get to them, I keep saying what's going to happen. And I usually do them on the weekend, but I'm midweek right now, and there's something really cool in the shop, so I thought I'll bring you along for the ride. So I had a guy, actually Ryan Tinker from Alaska, and he ordered a couple of handles. He ordered a French curve and I think a felling, American felling. Can't remember, but anyways, I shipped him the whole way up to Alaska to his P.O. box in Homer, Alaska. And they turned them around and sent them back. So it's taken almost a month for these things from when they left my shop, and that's the first time I've actually had a real issue with the mail service. But of course, it's going to the U.S., so I don't know what happened up in Alaska. But anyways, he didn't get a hold of them, and they shipped them back. So I always say return to sender if they don't take the handles. Hate to abandon them because they're nice stuff. So anyhow, when they came back, he said, hey, I'd like a couple other handles. I'd like a yellow birch and I'd like an elm. Now, I've made a few different handles over the years. I've made everything from I'll show you some of the ones. So as we know, my typical handles are ash and hickory. That's my go-to. But now I have messed around in the past, and here's an elm. So at one point in time, you can see the vessels. At one point in time, I did make an elm. So it's a nice smooth handle, I'll say that. Here's an oak. So you can see the rays in the oak. Okay, so the rays are going one way. Actually, the growth rings are going terrible in this handle. Looks pretty though. So that's an oak, and I've made these just so I can say I've done them, okay? And just to play around with them. I mean, I love making handles. Here's a maple. Okay, so that would be a rock maple handle there. And then I have, people talk about hornbeam, hop hornbeam, okay, or ironwood. Now, here's a question for you to answer down below. Why is it called ironwood? This is what the old timers used to make their whiffle trees out of. And whiffle trees were where the horses were hooked on to pull a sleigh. And of course, ironwood has unreal lateral strength. Okay, so lateral bending strength, you won't get anything tougher in the world than ironwood. It's unbelievable. So because it's so tough for bending or prying, I made a lot of my PV handles out of it for a while, until I started running out of finding a good source. And then, and of course, when I looked at the properties of the hickory's pretty darn good. So I've been cutting out some hickory bolts for my PV handles lately because it's good for it. So, but anyways, ironwood, of course, everybody knows ironwood is tough as shoe leather. So they said, you know, if it's that tough, why don't you make an axe handle out of it? So I'm going to talk about that. Now, some of my really early videos, I've talked about this a bit. But we need to talk about the properties of wood. And of course, being a graduate forester from UNB way back in the day, I do know a little bit about wood, okay? So when it comes to wood, the couple things that we don't realize that are different. So there's softwoods and there's hardwoods, as we all know, okay? So the pines and the spruces and the larches and stuff are all softwoods. And then, of course, the maples and the birches and the elms and the ironwoods and stuff are all hardwoods. So in softwoods, when we look about, and I sold lumber for years back at Valley Home Center, then I worked at the Do It Center here in Fredericton, then I worked at, actually I did a little stint at Kent Building Supply, so I worked for the big Irving empire for a bit. That was my stint with Irving. Didn't last long. But if you've sold lumber, or if you've worked with lumber, you know that in softwood lumber, the wider the growth rings, the poorer quality the wood is. So good quality lumber has tight growth rings, and that's because there's more late wood. And in softwoods, late wood has thicker cells. It's a darker in color because the cell walls are thicker, so it looks like that's where you get the rings that you can count on your tree. So in softwood, if you want tough wood, tougher lumber or whatever, tighter growth rings means tougher wood. So I just, as a forester, always thought, well, it's the same thing in hardwoods. And it actually isn't. So what happens in hardwoods? There's two types of hardwood wood types. There's what we call ring porous, and then there's diffuse porous. So if you look at the end of hardwood, and I'll show you a couple of examples. Because I just made a couple of good examples. Okay, so here's a few examples. So this is hickory. It's called pecan hickory. And if you look at it closely here, you can see that there's rings, and those rings are caused by vessels. So there's vessels in hardwoods, okay, and they are basically like a straw. And what happens is, when they're put on, of course, there's a lot of flow of liquids and stuff that goes up and down them, and they're all put on in rings. So, and they're put on early in the season. So they are probably they are the thinner walled cells of the hardwoods. And then, of course, when it gets later in the season, you get the thicker walled cells, but that actually comes out to be the clear color. So what makes the rings in hardwoods are the vessels. That's what you can count, as you can see those vessel rings in the hardwoods. And then, of course, in the softwoods, it's the late wood. So the early wood makes it in hardwoods. The late wood makes it in softwoods. So wider growth rings in hardwoods means there's more late wood, less early wood. So it's actually a wider growth ring in hardwoods means it's tougher wood. It's better wood. So that was a real shocker to me when I found that out. But of course, the more I looked into it, the more sense it made. So it's the same thing. You want more late wood. That's the thicker walled cells. And in hardwoods, when you get the wide growth rings, you are getting thicker walled cells, more of that late wood in there. But in the softwoods, it's the opposite. It's the early wood, the white stuff, that gets put on a lot more thicker, and that's what makes it weaker wood. So that's ring porous. And the ring porous woods, because they have so many vessels all in a ring, they're good for shock absorption. So tools that strike other tools. This is the kind of wood to put in tools that strike other tools because it absorbs shock. So that's your hickories, your elms, your ashes, and your oaks are all ring porous. So you look at the ends of them, you can see the row of rings. So here's another one here. So this is elm. And I just cut this off. Take a look at that. You can see the growth rings really clearly in it. And you can see they're fairly wide right here. And you can see that the narrow band of white that's your rings, Okay, so that's the ring porous right there. And then the large ring of dark, that is your late wood, which makes it stronger wood. So, as I was cutting this out, I thought, why don't I show the guys what it's like to work an elm? Because most guys don't use it. And it's you're going to order an East Coast lumberjack handle made out of specialty wood. They're more expensive, just so you know up front, okay? Because it's hard to find it. And for yellow birch, as you see, you go back to one of my videos when I split it out, it took me 35 minutes. I didn't get a thing out of it. So it's really hard to secure the wood. So obviously, you're going to have to pay a little bit more for wood that's really hard to get and hard to secure. Nice stuff. So when I made this, so here it is. Here's the yellow birch. Now I showed you working yellow birch before, and this one here is a nice white yellow birch. Okay, so it's the wood in it's nice and white. The grain's going proper. Really, really nice handle. But I've worked it before. It's easy to work. Okay, but now what I've never shown you is working an elm, because actually I haven't had an order for one for a while. Now there's a couple things I notice about the elm. The first thing is this. Okay. So not only does Ryan Tinker in Alaska like the wood, but there's some kind of bug that likes the elm. He's been boring in my wood pile. So looking the handle over, that's the only, there's a little hole right here, right in the middle of it. Okay, see that? There's a little hole there. Now this bug, whatever it is, this little beetle, doesn't seem to bother with wood. He just bores right through wherever he wants to go. So I saw, when I looked at this here, if you look at the end of this, look at this. There's a few holes here. So he's actually bored down through. He's bored across. He's bored pretty much wherever he wants to go. So he's got quite the chompers on him. So I'll have to look into that or talk to my insect pals in the forestry world and see what kind of bug that is. And there's a couple right in the very end. Look at that. So this guy's... now the good thing is most of the holes are right up here in the end. So that isn't going to matter because you're going to wedge it anyhow. But what I wanted to do was bring you along and show you what it's like to work this. Okay, so I'm going to drop you down so you can check this out. And we're going to work this together so you can see how well elm works. So these are Adirondack patterns. So an Adirondack pattern is basically a double bit at the top and then it's a single bit handle at the bottom. So that's your typical Adirondack pattern. So cutting out on the bandsaw, I didn't notice anything different. It went nice and smooth and straight. There's a little bit of feathering here, so I'm not sure what that means. My grain is beautifully straight. So I'm going to use my old trusty Lee Valley spoke shave, and let's see how this works. So that's a pretty smooth so far. A little bit of a jump there. That's because the grain right here is going the opposite way. So it's not bad. So what I do on a double bit handle is I flatten the top and then I roll both sides. All right, so that's what I'm going to do. And of course, where it's 8-sided, I've got an angle here and I've got an angle there, and I do that on the bandsaw to save me a little bit of time when I'm rasping. Otherwise, you would have to rasp down that entire corner, right? That 90-degree corner, you got to rasp it down to get it rounded. So I just take those off in the bandsaw when I'm running it through. So that quickens up the process quite a lot. So actually going this way is really smooth. Okay, so it's working really nice. Now the only thing, when your wood works this nice, you can't get too aggressive. Because one thing I always tell people, you can always take more wood off, but it's pretty darn tough to put more wood on. Once it's gone, it's gone. So, if for wood like this, it's working quite easily, you got to make sure you don't gouge out too much at a time. So, just like that, and this side's pretty much done. I'm going to finish the bottom end here a little bit. And then, of course, we flip right over to the Stanley shirt form. And I'm just going to round out here by the palm swing. It's got a very different odor to it. There we go. Now, talking about smells, I started a new job. It's just part-time, but I got my scaler's license last year, scaling logs in the province, and there's a mill in the province that needed a scaler, so I applied for it, and I actually got the job. So it's about an hour away from home, so I'm traveling an hour a couple times a week. But I was at the mill. It's actually Garant's, so they make handles, which is kind of neat. So the East Coast Lumberjack is there, actually working, scaling the logs that are going to go in and make your all your snow shovel handles. So they use mostly ash and maple. So it's a pretty neat outfit, and probably about all I can tell you about it. Because I just signed a contract, and of course there's a lot of stuff that you're, it's confidential information that you can't really share with people. But anyways, that's what. And one thing I did notice, like they make nice handles. It's a pretty neat process. It's a mill, and they cut the logs and run them through and turn the handles out in them. But they make some beautiful handles. And but I noticed the smell of ash. I love the smell of ash, and I was in there yesterday, and of course they're manufacturing handles, and we're stacking them out there and stuff. It was a beautiful smell. So and nice looking handles. Like their 48 inches were beautiful. So anyways, that's where I'm spending a little bit of time right now. So now this elm has a funny smell. Some people might say it actually is a stinky smell. I don't know. Jury's still out on this really right now. So let's finish this side up. Round it out here a little bit. There we go. And then I always put my bevel on the end. And after I've done that, I flip right over to my Nicholson wood rasp, and I just smooth out all those lines. Okay, so elm is working pretty easily. Okay, so I get a few of those little rings, which tells me I'm going the wrong way for the grain. So I just flip my file over, my rasp over. Okay. So it's smoothing up pretty fast. Running the wrong way here, so I'll turn it over and go the other way, which isn't a problem. So when you're doing your handles and you go to your rasp, if you see it, those little they're little curls kind of, they're flaky, and they stick up. They're little feathers that stick out of the wood. That's because you're going against the grain. So let me show it to you. Okay, right there. So it's when this here happens. Okay, can you see those right there? Those little curls, and it's feathering. So they're coming. I'm trying to take them off this way, but they're coming actually the other way. So because they are, they'll your rasp, your wood's telling you go the other way. So don't argue with it. Okay, so I'm just going to go the opposite way, and they disappear right off the bat. Okay, so now they're gone. So smooth that out here. And there we go, and we're off to the other side. So just like that side's done. We're off to the other side. Now the other thing I notice, messing around with this ash handle, is it's pretty light. Now elm, anybody that's messed around with elm that's live knows that it's pretty flippin' heavy wood. But once it's dried out, okay, so I can see here very easily my grain is going the other way. So if you look at it, now I gotta get the light off of it here. Maybe I'll go this way. Okay. So the grain here, you can see it's going like there's a grain here, when I come down this way, I'm actually trying to lift that up. So you can see it's gouging. So if you have grain and you can see which way it's running, flip it over and go the other way. So on this one here, I'm going to flip it over. I'm going to go this way now instead. And you can see it runs along nice and smooth. Okay, so we always want to travel. Now this grain here, so because there's a grain coming here, it's disappeared here and it's here. We've got to go the other way because the grain's running this way up top here. So we'll just make it smooth up top, and then flop it over and make it smooth at the bottom. Now, it almost got some pretty neat little lines in it when you're doing this, so I kind of like that. It's a pretty little wood. There, that side's done. So it's finishing up here pretty quick, okay? I spent the first 5 minutes talking about woods, so it's only taken me about 10 minutes to finish this up. Okay, and now I'm on to the sure form. So we're just going to round up the handle at the bottom here. And finish up the back of it. There we go. My bevel on. Okay. And I want to check this. So, a couple other tricks here from the old East Coast lumberjack. When you're making a handle, the other thing I do when I finish the ends of my handles, the palm swell, and I like nice palm swells, okay? And once you hold an axe with a beautiful palm swell, you'll know why. Because you're not going to lose the tool out of your hand when you're swinging it, okay? So it's I'm known for my nice palm swells, okay? That's East Coast lumberjack is known for, and look at that, okay? So it swells nice this way, swells, and it fits your hand beautifully. Your hand stops there, okay? So that's a dandy. Now what you have to do when you're making those is you need to check it for symmetry. So always turn your handle this way and make sure you've got the same symmetry on the top and the similar symmetry on the bottom, okay? So both sides need to be the same. Now, and again, it's wood. So sometimes when I'm doing it, like, I might gouge a little bit deeper with the bandsaw, or I might be rasping a little bit harder one side than the other, which is no big deal. So all you have to do is, before you're done it, take a look at it and say, okay, well, how'd I do? I need to take, so that's what I just did there a second ago. I needed a little bit more off this one side, so I took a little bit more off it to make it uniform all around, or even side to side. So that's the elm. So just like that, we're done. So that's an Adirondack. Again, it's got the double bit head at the top, but it's got a single bit handle at the bottom. Okay, and I'll just finish rasping that up, and then do the yellow birch and send them to Ryan out in Alaska. So there's some neat stuff coming up. I'm going to show you how you determine the angle of your axis. Actually, I figured out a pretty simple and easy way to show you. So I'm going to do that. That's coming right up. I've also got those stones coming up. So if you haven't subscribed to my channel yet, or give me a thumbs up, please do, if you're liking it. And I'll continue to keep pounding out as much of this stuff as I can. But I want to tell you how to get the proper angle on an axe, how to figure it out, and how to actually do it. So it's pretty simple. So you're going to want to see that one. It's a good one to know. And then you can make sure you're actually putting either a 14, 16, 18, 20, whatever you want degree angle on the edge of your bit for your axe. Because a nice 16, 18 degree axe bevel will chop like crazy, as we know, because we watch us lumberjack guys do it on TSN all the time. Well, some of us can do it good, some of us can't, and I'm in the very quickly getting in the group that can't. So anyways, that's an elm handle headed to Alaska. So when I got thinking about that, I thought I might as well bring the gang along for a ride. So that's this week's treat from the old East Coast Lumberjack. See you next time.